You close your eyes and nothing happens. You shift. You check your phone. You stare at the ceiling. You check your phone again. The clock says 1:47 a.m. and somewhere in the back of your mind, you start doing the math, calculating how many hours you have left if you fall asleep right now, which of course makes it harder to fall asleep. For roughly 300,000 years, your ancestors never once did any of that. Not the phone, not the clock, not the math, not even the concept of lying still in the dark for 8 unbroken hours and calling it a failure if it didn't happen. The way you sleep tonight, or struggle to sleep, is one of the most modern things about you, and almost none of it is natural. So, what was natural? What did sleep actually look like for the people your body was built from? The answer is stranger, and in many ways more interesting than you'd expect. Let's start with the most basic assumption, that humans are supposed to sleep in one long block through the night, 8 hours, uninterrupted. That model is so embedded in modern life that when you wake up at 3 a.m. and can't fall back asleep, you assume something is wrong with you. But historian Roger Ekirch spent over 2 decades combing through pre-industrial diaries, court records, medical texts, and literature. What he found, published in his landmark 2001 paper, and later expanded in his book, shattered the 8-hour myth completely. For most of human history, and well into the 17th and 18th centuries, people didn't sleep in one stretch. They slept in two. The first sleep began shortly after dark and lasted roughly 4 hours. Then people woke up naturally for an hour or two in what Ekirch's sources called the watch or the watching. They were calm, often described as pleasantly drowsy. They talked to a bed partner. They prayed. They thought. Some got up and did light tasks by candlelight. Some had sex. Then, without any alarm, without any anxiety, they drifted into a second sleep until morning. This wasn't insomnia. This was the default. Ekirch found references to this pattern across medieval England, Renaissance Italy, and colonial America. The physician's term for it was segmented sleep. The folk term was simply first sleep and second sleep. Then something changed. Gaslighting arrived in the early 1800s. Streets in London and Paris blazed through the night. Cafes and theaters stayed open later. The Industrial Revolution dragged workers into rigid schedules with a fixed start time that didn't care when your second sleep ended. Gradually, the natural gap between first and second sleep compressed. By the early 20th century, it had vanished entirely from cultural memory, and by the time sleep scientists began studying the modern brain, they were studying a brain already reshaped by a century of artificial light. So the insomnia epidemic, the one affecting roughly 1 in 3 adults in the industrialized world today, may not be a failure to sleep. It may be your body trying to do exactly what it evolved to do, surfacing into its ancient midnight waking, and finding nothing but a dark ceiling and a buzzing mind with no outlet. But segmented sleep is only the beginning of how differently your ancestors slept. Psychologist Jerome Siegel and his team did something remarkable in 2015. They went to 3 of the last remaining small-scale forager societies on Earth, the Hadza of Tanzania, the San of Namibia, and the Tsimane of Bolivia, and fitted their members with small wrist monitors that tracked sleep in real time. What they found contradicted almost everything modern sleep science had assumed. The average sleep duration across all 3 groups was between 5.7 and 7.1 hours per night. Not the 8 that doctors recommend, not the 9 that sleep coaches sell, and yet these groups showed almost no clinical insomnia, almost no sleep disorders, and none of the biological stress markers associated with chronic sleep deprivation in modern populations. How? The answer seems to lie not in how long they slept, but in how they slept and when. First, temperature. The Hadza, the San, and the Tsimane all fell asleep as the nightly temperature dropped and woke as it began to rise again before dawn. Their bodies were using the cold as a natural sleep cue, something close to what your thermostat is fumbling toward when you set it low at night. Modern bedrooms are often too warm and too stable, removing one of the body's oldest sleep anchors. Second, light. These groups fell asleep roughly 2 to 3 hours after sunset, not immediately when it got dark. They sat around fires. The warm orange glow of firelight, unlike the blue spectrum light of a phone screen, does not suppress melatonin the way LED light does. Your body can read firelight as evening. It reads your phone as noon. Third, safety. This one is subtle but profound. Sleep researchers who study threat perception have found that the nervous system needs to feel. genuinely safe before it will allow deep sleep. In modern life, your brain has more low-grade chronic stressors, debt, social conflict, information overload, than it knows how to resolve before bed. Your ancient ancestors had real physical dangers, but those dangers were either present or they weren't. You could read the situation. The modern threat landscape is diffuse, unresolvable, and permanent. Now let's reconstruct what a night might actually have looked like, say 30,000 years ago, somewhere in southwestern France, not far from what we now call the Dordogne Valley. The same landscape where the painted caves of Les Aisies were carved into cliff walls by hands not so different from yours. The fire is burning lower. Someone feeds it. The talk slows down. Children fall asleep first, pressed against adults, body heat shared. The group doesn't separate into individual rooms. There is no concept of that. Sleep is communal. Someone is almost always at least half awake at any given hour, not assigned to guard duty, just naturally cycling through a lighter phase. Anthropologist David Sampson calls this the sentinel hypothesis. In group sleep, the staggered sleep cycles of individuals provided passive, distributed protection through the night. No one person had to stay awake. The group collectively never fully went under. This may be why, when you sleep next to another person, you both sleep differently than when you sleep alone. You are still running that ancient social sleep program. Around midnight, or what we'd call midnight, some people stir. They talk quietly. Someone checks the fire. A child murmurs and is held without fully waking. Then the second sleep comes, softer and deeper, stretching toward the temperature rise that says dawn is coming. There is no alarm. There is no residual stress from having slept wrong. The body did what it built itself to do over hundreds of thousands of years of trial and refinement. Here is the counterintuitive part. Every modern sleep intervention, melatonin supplements, blackout curtains, white noise machines, sleep restriction therapy, cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia, is essentially an attempt to rebuild, artificially, the conditions your body was designed to inhabit. The cooling room mimics the falling night temperature. The blackout curtain mimics darkness your ancestors never had to manufacture. The therapy to stop clock watching is therapy to stop measuring sleep against a standard your body never agreed to. You are not a bad sleeper. You are an ancient sleeper living in a world that forgot what sleep actually was. The Ekirch finding never quite made it into mainstream sleep medicine. The Siegel study got headlines, then faded. The sentinel hypothesis is fascinating to evolutionary biologists and almost entirely absent from your doctor's advice. But your body hasn't forgotten any of it. When you wake at 3 a.m. and your mind is strangely calm, strangely clear, thinking through problems it couldn't crack during the day, that is not insomnia. That is first sleep ending. That is the watch. That is 300,000 years of your ancestors, sitting by a lower fire, doing exactly what you are doing right now. Nothing is wrong with you. You just forgot what you were built for. And thank you for watching this video. Don't forget to subscribe.